Hello, welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez in Quito, and this is from the South. A new attack on a military base in Iraq has wounded 4 people. On Sunday, several rockets hit the Al-Balad air base in the Salah al-Din province. The Iraqi armed forces said 8 Katyusha rockets wounded 4 members of the Air Force, including 2 officers. The attack comes just days after Iran's Revolutionary Guard fired 22 missiles at 2 Iraqi military bases that host U.S. troops. The Iranian attack was carried out a few days after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, Iran's military commander. The Trump administration has threatened Iraq with freezing one of its most important bank accounts if Baghdad expels U.S. troops from the region. Shutting down Iraq's account at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York could severely damage the country's financial system, as Iraq puts its revenue from oil sales there. This comes after the Iraqi parliament voted earlier this month to oust about 5,300 U.S. troops from the region after Washington ordered the assassination of the top Iranian general Soleimani. Meanwhile, Lebanese resistance group Hezbollah says it is time for Iran's allies in the region to avenge the assassination of Soleimani by expelling the U.S. military from the region.
I believe that it is due for the axis of resistance to start working on a retaliation. What was said a few days ago by everyone was not just for local consumption. It was not to contain the attack against the resistance. It was not to give morale to people. The forces of the resistance are serious and honest and intent on this huge goal, and the coming days and weeks and months will prove it. It is going to be a long path, a long path. In order to give an excuse, he said that he ordered the killing of Soleimani because he was planning to attack U.S. embassies in the region. Liar. He is lying to his people. He is the biggest liar in American history. He is the biggest lying U.S. president. They were all liars, but he is the biggest liar in the history of the United States. Qasem Soleimani was not planning to blow up American embassies. Absolutely not.
Hundreds of Iranians have protested outside the British embassy in Tehran. The protesters gather outside the embassy chanting slogans against Britain and its ambassador to Iran, Robert Macaire, who is accused of inciting anti-government protests. The demonstrators also burned British flags, calling for the embassy to be closed. The protesters have called on their government to take strong action against Macaire.
You see, every time something bad happens, the ambassador of this evil country of England, the cunning fox, intrudes. Last night, he was also seen filming at the gathering and was arrested. I don't understand why our foreign minister wants to solve everything with a smile. I think serious punishment should be given to the UK.
In other news, the government of Colombia is facing a new scandal over alleged wiretapping of political opponents. According to local media, judges, lawmakers, journalists and others were wiretapped by a group directed by the former general of the army, Nicasio Martinez. One of the affected officials is the mayor of Cali, Jorge Iván Ospina, who revealed that he found hidden microphones in his office. General Martinez last month retired from his position due to what he called family reasons. And the Special Representative for Freedom of Expression of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights expressed his solidarity with journalists and mass media in Colombia who were targeted by wiretaps and also demanded an investigation. Also in Colombia, a bus fell down a ravine in the municipality of Sucre in Santander, killing 6 people and wounding at least 20. According to authorities, the bus had a failure in its brakes. Among the victims is a 12-year-old boy, according to the local mayor. Survivors have been taken to a nearby hospital and police have been sent to the scene to help those wounded in the accident. Haitians paid tribute to the hundreds of thousands who died in the 2010 earthquake. Haiti's President Jovenel Moïse and other officials attended the memorial for the victims on the outskirts of Port-au-Prince. In January 12, 2010, a magnitude 7 quake hit the nation, killing more than 200,000. The country continues to face failed reconstruction efforts and political instability.
Well, I have to say that the past 10 years have been the toughest years for Haiti, politically, economically, and I think a lot of people have a sense of loss of hope, because they feel like we have lost the attention of so many. The international community is no longer having Haiti on their radar.
Robert Abela has been chosen as Malta's new prime minister. Abela is expected to be unveiled as prime minister after being elected leader of the Labour Party, for which he automatically assumes the role of prime minister. He's replacing the former PM, Joseph Muscat, who stepped down due to growing criticism over his handling of an investigation into the murder of an investigative journalist.
I would also like to thank my friend Chris, with who, in the last few months, I have worked so much together. I thank him for his candidacy, and I look forward to continue to work together for the good of this party.
Welcome back. More news at this hour. The United States' Special Representative for Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, has admitted the financing of the Venezuelan opposition and funneling of money towards the media. Political leaders are denouncing the interventionism and asking for an investigation.
Throughout the week, we witnessed a number of noteworthy events involving the press in Venezuela. We saw attacks and robberies by opposition lawmakers against journalists and aggression by other civilians against reporters. There are acts which are being investigated among the numerous incidents which took place between Sunday, January 5th and Tuesday, January 7th, all related to the National Assembly vote which took place to elect a new presidency to the legislative body.
They justify the aggression against reporters because they don't agree with their politics. No journalist, no communicator has to agree with any politics. A journalist's job is to inform. We condemn any attempt to label real journalists as political propagandists.
A number of Twitter accounts were blocked, among them government institutions and political leaders, and all on the same week in which the United States government confessed that it finances the Venezuelan opposition and what they call free press.
But we have done an agreement with the legitimate government of Venezuela, a development agreement, and we are able to do things to help, for example, the free press in Venezuela, to help people keep publishing and to keep broadcasting. We have some funds that we can use for the National Assembly. So there are a variety of things. This is all being done through, or not all, mostly being done through AID, but also the Democracy and Human Rights Bureau here at State.
The National Constituent Assembly will be requesting an investigation into those media outlets.
It's obviously not only a violation to our laws, but it's also an interference in Venezuelan affairs. It's a disrespectful way to influence in the public opinion, especially in the international opinion.
Independent of the editorial lines of these outlets, experts point to an absence of ethical standards among much of the Venezuelan media.
United States has financed them the whole time, including in these newspapers. People were paid by the United States to set positions and establish media trends. New journalists are being trained by communication schools, where ethics don't work, don't matter, and don't exist.
The battle for truth in Venezuela is a daily one, and the media is at the forefront of the battle.
French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe says his government will implement the controversial pension reform despite resistance from labor unions and social organizations. Philippe said while the government is prepared to make concessions, it will not abandon the proposed reforms. He said one of the concessions is the withdrawal of a proposal to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. Trade unions have for weeks been protesting against these reforms, which they say will disadvantage workers.
Very early on, we said we were ready to move forward on a certain number of points. But it's true that very early on, we said that we were determined to build a universal pension system, which will be fairer, more solid, and more understandable. And this our determination is absolute. I have had the chance to say so, and that passes through the elimination of special pension schemes. And it's true that there are a lot of people, particularly those who benefit from these special schemes, who are not convinced by the point of the reform, or who don't want these special schemes to be removed. I say to them that we will see this through. So when it comes down to it, all those who are inciting them to continue with the strike may be sending them to a dead end.
And trade union leaders said they are prepared to hold a new round of talks with the government as long as it comes with proposals that are in the interest of the workers.
We have seen the bill. As you know, it's a bill that leaves much to be desired, or we only know after it has been voted for. They are basically asking us to trust them. I don't know if the French people agree, and so we expect to get a letter this afternoon. But I'm not going to make any comments on a letter whose contents I don't know. I don't know what else it could contain other than what was said yesterday and what's in the bill, but I'm not going to comment on something I don't know.
11 people, including 8 children, have died after a boat taking them to Greece sunk off the coast of Turkey. According to the Turkish Coast Guard, the boat was carrying 19 migrants when it capsized and 8 people were rescued. The nationality of the 11 victims has not yet been established. The incidents come a day after the 12 migrants died when their boat sunk off the coast of Greece. In Honduras, more than 20 communities are being affected by hydroelectric and extractivist projects which are being carried out without their approval.
There are more than 8,000 people living in Reytoka, a town located at the south of the capital. They've been protesting for a number of years now against the risks of the building of a hydroelectric plant which could be brought into the community.
We are rising up against the construction of a dam on a river, which is our only source of clean water. So the municipality seems to have made an agreement with the multinational which is building the dam.
Residents denounced that the central government convinced the mayor to grant the necessary permits to build the dam. And now he's the one who's trying to intimidate the people to back off from their protest.
Because we know that if we don't take care of nature, God will punish us. Because one of the things He left us was that river, so we can take care of it.
We have suffered everything: death threats, sleepless nights, exhaustion. Even our families are divided over this issue. Our children have been threatened with death.
Currently in Honduras, there are more than 500 hydroelectric projects. Most of them haven't been approved by the communities. This has caused uprisings in different departments of the country, despite the criminalization of those who oppose them.
They treat us as if we were criminals. We're not criminals. We're very honest people. We're fighting for life, because if there's no river, where are we going to live?
Meanwhile, the mayor assures that he's not in favor of the hydroelectric plant. On the other hand, people say that he refuses to hear from them.
I've got nothing to hide. I have a clear conscience and know that I will never sell the river for anything.
In Honduras, more than 5,000 people have been criminalized due to territorial conflicts generated by mining concessions and hydroelectric plants. Currently at the National Congress, a bill is being voted on to authorize the more than 500 projects and to justify the criminalization of environmental activists.
Thank you for joining us again. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has held bilateral talks with visiting Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali. Ahmed Ali won last year's Nobel Peace Prize for initiating political reforms in his country. He's in South Africa on a 2-day official visit. The talks focused on boosting ties between the two countries, as well as enhancing the role of the African Union in solving challenges on the continent.
We must find African solutions to African problems. The peace that has to prevail in Libya must be a peace that is grounded in African soil, it must be pursued and led by the African Union.
We need election because there is challenge and we want to confront it in a very democratic way so as to have a legitimate government. So there are lots of excuses for this, but in my opinion, it's better for Ethiopians and for Ethiopian parties to conduct the election on time in a very peaceful and democratic manner.
Ahmed has responded to Trump's comments suggesting that the U.S. president was a more deserving recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Ahmed said if Trump has any complaints about this election, he should take them to Norway and not Ethiopia.
To be honest, I don't have any clue about the criteria, how the Nobel Committee select an individual for the prize. So the issue of President Trump must go to the Nobel Prize Committee. I'm not aware how they elect or select someone to provide the prize. And I'm not working for the prize. I'm working that peace is a very critical thing for our region. And if they recognize, and if President Trump complained, it must go to Oslo, not to Ethiopia.
Hundreds of people on Sunday took to the streets of the French capital, Paris, to protest against the killing of a delivery driver by police officers. 42-year-old Cédric Chouviat suffered a heart attack on January 3rd after being tackled on the ground by several police officers. He was transported to a local hospital where he died 2 days later. Libya's warring parties have agreed on a conditional ceasefire. Forces loyal to General Khalifa Haftar and the United Nations recognized government have decided to follow the deal brokered by Russia and Turkey. The ceasefire went into effect at midnight local time on Sunday. The peace truce is expected to end months of fighting in Tripoli. Haftar's forces in April launched an offensive to wrestle the control of the capital from the UN-backed government.
The General Command of the Libyan Arab Armed Forces announces a ceasefire of military operations in the western region effective from midnight on 12 January 2020. We call on the opposing side to implement this ceasefire at the same time. The response will be severe in the event of a breach of the truce by the opposing side.
We are committed to the truce, but the enemy is still active. The blood of martyrs will not be lost. We are waiting for further instructions.
Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has met with Libyan Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj in Istanbul after reports of a ceasefire breach. The meeting came after both the so-called Libyan National Army and the Government of National Accord accused each other of violating the agreement just a few hours after it came into effect. China's Foreign Minister Wang has arrived in Zimbabwe as he concludes his African tour. Wang is set to hold discussions with President Emerson Mnangagwa and other senior government officials. The visit is aimed at strengthening bilateral relations that date back to the pre-independence days. China has provided military and financial support to Zimbabwean liberation movements. Uganda has been gearing up for a possible locust invasion after a widespread infestation was reported in neighboring Kenya. The Ugandan government has announced it is ready to handle the threat after experts said a desert locust swarm could invade the country's northeast region by the end of the month. The agriculture minister says the magnitude of the swarm hasn't been seen in the last 70 years, and a recent outbreak in Eastern Africa raised concerns over food security in the region. An average swarm of about 150 million locusts can eat as much food in one day as 2,500 people.
As a ministry, we are prepared. It's good that there's cooperation within in the region. We are working together. That's why we are sending our technical people to benchmark, to see how when we have a problem, technical backstopping can be handled quickly. So the threat is real.
And with that, we end our news brief. But you can find all of our stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.com.